Okay, we are live, I believe, again, ready to go. It is 9:45, Senate Transportation Committee, and our next item on the agenda, we talked about it, excuse me, a week or so ago. Work zone light paddles and for safety. Uh, and we thought about we should ask for the Associated General Contractors of Vermont to comment because they're certainly in the business every day of doing construction, and I'm sure they use a lot of safety precautions wherever they can. Uh, we've been told that they haven't been used much, and we're trying to find out why and if they're effective or not effective, or cost. And I heard something about batteries, and so at this time, Matt Musgrave from the AGC of Vermont is with us this morning, and probably would like to give us a little update on what he thinks about the lighted paddle for safety zones. Matt, you with us this morning?
Yes, Mr. Chair, I am. Thank you for having
Morning.
me.
Good morning. Good morning. How
Good
you doing?
morning.
All right.
I'm doing well. Thank you for having me.
The Wobby buy you coffee this morning or what? No, not yet.
We have coffee, the red cups, the full 9 yards.
Okay. All right. Okay.
So for the record, my name is Matt Musgrave. I'm with the Associated General Contractors of Vermont. I'm familiar with the committee. I know you know who we are, but for folks watching us out there in YouTube land, we're the trade association that represents contractors and construction workers in Vermont. We provide industry-specific training through Occupational Safety and Health Administration, that's OSHA, the Mine Safety and Health Administration, that's MSHA, and we're home to nationally recognized safety instruction and a safety instructor, Richard Wabi. Our members employ annually anywhere between 15 and 20,000 people with careers offering wages and benefits well above Vermont's livable wage. Our members work directly with state agencies such as VTrans, Building General Services, the Department of Labor to enhance delivery of our services to Vermonters to keep people moving on the roads, to keep our commercial buildings and our state buildings modern and in good shape. I did want to take a point of personal privilege here. I know Richard Wabi would like me to share with you that this trophy that the AGC won this year, the AGC of Vermont was recognized as the top AGC throughout the country. And our executive director and I took a flight down to Florida to accept this award. And I know Senator Mazza, he wanted you to see that award, so I brought it along with me today. I know in general, props aren't widely accepted in testimony, but I hope you'll make an exception.
Well, that's very nice. I thought Wobby's picture would be on it or something, you know.
We're working on it, and we can't. There's a workforce development challenge right now, and finding engravers has been particularly challenging. So I'll move on. So work zone safety has been a priority of ours, and quite frankly, mine for quite some time. With the uncountable near misses, aggressive, distracted drivers. We have deaths in our work zones. We have a lot of close calls, and it makes it really difficult for folks to look at those types of jobs, which in a lot of cases can raise people up above that Vermont livable wage and put them into outcomes that are highly beneficial. Attached to my written testimony that I provided, you'll find some statistics that VTrans puts out related to traffic deaths annual on a fairly regular basis. And what you'll note looking at those statistics, and it's not just Vermont, it's across the country, we're seeing a staggering increase of deaths on the roads, not just with workers in work zones, but also the traveling public. And we're attributing this to high excessive speeds. If you look at the chart that I provided, relatively half of those who fell on our roadways were driving at excessive speeds. And that's something that we're seeing in our work zone fairly frequently. And I can tell you, I just relocated from Montpelier back to Essex, where I came from. And over the last 4 years of me living down here in Montpelier, the traffic pattern has changed significantly. The average speed is no longer 65 to 75. It is now, from my own observation, people are traveling above 75 miles an hour, and 80 miles an hour seems to be the norm on the interstate. I see people passing me on a fairly regular basis, and I only know how fast I drive. So we've been working on a number of different projects trying to get some work zone safety. We've been working with VTrans on creating additional training programs, working on engineering our construction packages better. We're also participating in a pilot program study that would bring some level of automated speed enforcement into our work zones. Another thing we've been talking about, and it originated in this committee, was the pilot program to start testing out these lighted paddles to judge what the efficacy was and whether or not they would provide improved visibility for workers in the field. We understand at this point that the pilot program is only halfway complete, and we still need to have some more results. But we are concerned about challenges that we have seen already, particularly with the battery life. Sometimes these are fragile compared to the other signs, which are just pieces of plastic. And we're just still trying to figure out whether and how this would work for us moving forward. I mean, our concern really is the continuity of business as well as the safety of our people that are out there. From the presentation that I saw from VTrans last week, it seems that the jury is very much still out on this, but what I am willing to talk about today before I take questions is what we would need to see to be supportive of requiring these lighted paddles. We know that the MUTC already suggests that as an option, flagger can go ahead and use those. And I believe if they felt that those were keeping them safer in the work zone, that they would be employing those already. But the things that we'll need to see moving forward in order to support this policy, because it is, quite frankly, an additional burden that we're placing on the flagging community to make sure that these paddles work, that they're charged regularly, and that they can get through the day. The first thing that we need to talk about is parity across all of our roads. We believe that it's important that if we were to add this as a requirement to the state projects through VTrans, that the requirement should also exist across the board for all other industries. Meaning if someone is performing utility work that doesn't fall under VTrans, they should be using these lit paddles too. If it falls under municipal work that doesn't fall under VTrans specifications manual, they should also be using them there as well. So we would need to see an across the board policy so that people don't pick and choose which signs that they take seriously. Is the lighted sign the official sign that I have to stop for? And do I have to stop for this utility truck on the side of the road that doesn't have one of those lit signs? So we think it's important that we have parity across the board so that there is no confusion with the traveling public. So that's number one. Number two, we understand that VTrans this will be a pay item under VTrans, and that pay item is going to be an increase in what it costs to have a traffic flagger at the work zone. So I think that we have to acknowledge that both here in committee, and VTrans needs to acknowledge that your cost of flaggers will go up. The difference in these signs is not huge. You're talking, $50 to $80 for one of the non-lit signs. And I believe Jeremy Reed's presentation suggested that we could get the lit paddles for about $300. The challenge that I see, is it's not necessarily on the single unit. It's the fact that if I break one of those lights, I need a whole new paddle, or I need to buy a replacement kit for it. If I drop one of those signs on the ground, whether it be on purpose or by accident, it's going to break. Whereas one of my other plastic start-stop signs is a lot more durable, can handle being thrown in the back of a pickup truck. And I think we all can agree that the owner of the sign would maybe take a little bit better care of it than someone that didn't own the sign. So we need to just be aware that these things are a lot more fragile. They're going to need more than one of these signs per flagger, whereas the old signs, they could deal with just one. The last thing that we think is important is that we have a policy that if we do require these signs at the work zone, that we have a start your day with a working paddle policy that allows them to start, that requires them to start the day with a working lit paddle. But if that paddle breaks by accident or by purpose and the lights no longer work, we need to be able to complete the day's work without stopping. Stopping work in a work zone causes delays. Those delays translate to much higher costs per job, and it results in a lot of negotiation that sometimes the contractors win and sometimes they lose based on the reason why they had to stop work for the day. As you know, these projects have time limits that they must meet. So we need to make sure that the money is there. We need to make sure that there's parity across all roads. And we need to make sure that there is a, oh my gosh, the sign broke policy that allows the work zone to continue work throughout the day, provided that the next day they return with a working paddle. And that's what I have today. We can work with this policy, but there needs to be some additional consideration to those 3 points that I've brought up today. And I'd welcome questions. Thank you.
Okay, questions from anyone? I just have one to start. What if that was the policy just for interstate, for example? That's where the fastest traffic is, or because right now you use a combination of safety devices on the interstate. You have lights, you have paddles. Sometimes the safety person is half a mile ahead of the project. Sometimes they're closer. So there's a variation now. Is that correct?
So I've personally never seen a flagger on the interstate. Generally, they use engineering controls to put people into a single lane rather than stopping traffic on the interstate. Okay. So okay. That wouldn't necessarily work.
Okay. Questions?
Senator Mazza.
Yep, go right ahead.
I kind of like the comment of the gentleman that spoke the other day, and I can't remember who it was. I was just trying to think it was. It said that if you don't think it's a problem, or if you are the cause of a concern in a work area, that you should make them flag for a day. And I think that would probably get the point across that it's a dangerous job. It really, really is. And any light that we could, no pun intended, but anything that we could do to keep that a little bit safer. I mean, I think we've proven over and over again that the traveling public isn't going to slow down. They're just not. So to keep these people more visible, or come up with more stringent traffic control, it's not going to go away by itself.
If I may respond.
Yeah, go ahead.
You know, we're working on a number of different pieces, and I think it starts with the employer and the employee's responsibility to learn how to do their job, how to stay out of harm's way the best that they can. I believe we're working together, and this is one of those policies, on some engineering controls that can help with the visibility piece. The other side of it that we've been working on with the other transportation committee in the House are increased fines that I believe passed out last year or the prior biennium for speeding or violating the law within work zones. We're also looking at a couple of different pieces, and the other pieces that we're looking at are specifically related to enforcement of our existing laws. And we are working with VTrans on trying to create a fourth job duty that a uniformed officer can perform within the work zone. Currently, under the VTrans contract, the uniformed officer can only perform 3 different tasks. 1 is assist in setting up the work zone, 2 is helping as a flagger, and 3 is a stationary blue light. To a lot of the officers' frustration, they're just not allowed to leave those work zones, even if they see an egregious crime occurring in front of them. So we're working to try to have a fourth job that the uniformed officer could perform within those work zones, which is being able to enforce the law, whether it's all the time, part of the time, or in special circumstances. The challenge we have there is we have a workforce development issue within law enforcement. And I've been recently contacted by the Chamber of Commerce for the city of Burlington area. They were inquiring whether or not and how many sheriffs we would be using on the roads this summer, because it appears that Burlington is seeking some level of private contract enforcement for neighborhoods because the police force in Burlington has shrunk so much. So there is a shortage of police officers. So what we're looking at is another program there's already, you voted last year to create a study program for speed safety cameras, which is in the process now. They've already presented up in the House Transportation Committee. The presentation was very compelling based on the experience of other states, showing how to prevent and avoid some of those privacy issues that people have brought up in the past. And nationally, we're seeing Secretary Buttigieg from the Federal Transportation Agency has now stated that they plan to put speed enforcement signs, speed enforcement cameras on interstates across the country. So this is something that's a national trend that's taking hold. So we're looking at everything involved to make a comment to your question, Senator Ingalls, is it's engineering, it's training, and law enforcement are the things that we believe will help keep our workers safe, as well as the traveling public. We had a couple of fatalities on the project that was the traveling public that occurred on the project that was between the Colchester exits, the Milton Colchester exit and the Winooski Colchester exit. And it wasn't the result of anything other than speed.
I think that you raised some very good points, and that we're all trying to move in the right direction. But talking about the law enforcement piece, it's pretty much known that the one stationary has to stay there, and then to increase for visibility, but then to increase the portions of trying to actually write tickets and all that, you have to hire another law enforcement piece, which is very, very expensive. I mean, instead of $300 for a new paddle, you're probably talking to $300 an hour. And I don't know that. I'm not trying to throw something out there, but it just seems like training, education, and visibility are probably your least cost methods of trying to solve a problem.
You, Matt, you went to the national convention or whatever it is. What are other states doing this or not doing it? Or everybody got their own thing going on? Or is it a national trend to do one thing in particular?
So every state generally has their own pot of soup, so to speak, in terms of policy to keep people safe. What we are seeing in the pilot study for the camera systems is showing that more and more across the country, you're starting to see these types of pilot programs show up because, again, it's really the fact that the traveling public doesn't feel that there's any risk of penalty going through work zones, and other states have the same issues that we have with speed, with the lack of law enforcement availability.
So how does the camera work? Tell me how the camera takes the picture of the car going, and then they send them a ticket or something, or how does that work?
So I would definitely suggest having the folks that perform that working group that I participated in, because they know a lot more technically about it than I do.
Because right now we've talked about stop signs and lights, people going through, and nobody wants to talk cameras. And I'm just wondering how that would, because that's who's driving the car, whose car is it registered to, name.
The study that they pulled out specifically talked about one particular solution that they would use that only focuses on the license plate. And it would have to, the way that the program was explained, and again, there's someone that's more technically capable than me, but it has to go through two separate radars and show that it's the same speed in both radars. That's at least 10 miles an hour over the speed limit. And then it snaps a picture of the back license plate as it's driving away. And they did that and it only supplies, and you can have it programmed to supply either a photo of the license plate, or you can have it supply just the numbers of the license plate. And they did that because they were contemplating some of those privacy issues of who might be driving the car. And they're treating it more like a parking ticket than a criminal violation. So the ticket, or in our studies, our pilot program, for example, doesn't involve a ticket at all. It involves just a warning letter to raise awareness to the driver. But in other states, they do, and actually they advise that we have a ticketing policy, because again, they tried to go the warning route, and when people figure out they're just getting a warning, they disregard the law.
I think you have to be conscious too of what the politics of each state are. Some politics, you can't go against the grain of what the politics of your state are. And the whole goal of this is to provide safety to the people that are out there in those work zones. And if you're trying to change the whole culture of what your politics of your state are, like with cameras or increased fines and stuff like that, you're probably not going to get there when you need to get there. And so that's kind of why I'm going towards the visibility and education part more than anything, because I don't see cameras happening in this state with the privacy of what people want.
That's correct.
And actually, my preference would be law enforcement having a fourth duty that they can perform. That's ultimately, I would walk away from the signs immediately.
Questions? I don't see everybody on the screen. Any other comments, questions from Matt? Well, thank you for the oh, go ahead.
Well, Jane's got something.
No, my only comment is it appears like there are a variety of, with technology, a variety of ways of looking at safety, and the lighted paddle is one that comes with obviously some challenges, but it seems like there are other techniques or strategies that have been in place, and we ought to, and so rather than focusing on one, we probably ought to look at a variety, because certainly I think technology, lane changes, lighting, the stoplights in, for example, Plainfield Village doesn't use flaggers, it's using lighting. So it seems like there are a variety of techniques, but it's really a concern. But the more we can protect workers and figure out how we do it is, I guess, going to be an ongoing challenge.
Well, that's why I brought it up, because I had seen one a year ago somewhere. And
Yeah.
it looked like it got my attention as I was driving through, that I didn't know. That's why I brought it up for discussion. I think it's something that we're all looking for safety for the poor person out there that's directing or handling traffic. So like you say, Jane, any bits and pieces, sometimes you can put together, it's a help. We can save a couple lives or one life even. Okay, Matt, thank you very much for coming this morning. Appreciate it.
Thanks for having me, and I really appreciate it. And I'll look forward to seeing you next week to talk about more exciting subject, workforce development.
All right. Okay. Thanks a lot. Okay. Our next item this morning is the franchise. We've discussed this many times. And this morning we're going to hear from some folks that are going to testify on some of the issues involved with this franchise bill, but we'll give everybody a chance. So I think the first we have, I know we're a couple minutes early, but Jeannie, who do we have in our waiting room this morning?
You have everyone, Senator.
Okay. So who would like to lead off this morning? We have John Zacconi, Executive Secretary, Transportation Board, Chris Curtis, David Bright, who is not with us this morning. And we have Chris and we have Johnson, Mr. Johnson.
I think Mr. Bright is here. Yep.
Oh, he is.
Chris
Yep.
Curtis. Can
And good morning, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Would you like to lead off?
Mr. Chairman, I believe we'd like to have Chris Grimaldi of General Motors begin for us this morning.
Okay. Okay, Chris from General Motors. Good morning.
Hey, good morning, Senator Mazza. Good morning, Senator Perchlik, Senator Kitchell, Senator Chittenden, and Senator Ingalls. Senator Mazza, I like what I think I see is a Stingray picture, and maybe some Corvette models behind you.
Yeah, we're up. Yeah, I'm a Corvette. Not they just yeah, I got a few of my garage for collection. I just see on TV last night that the plant had a problem with a hurricane or something, or fire, or what was it?
Yeah, that facility, it's in Kentucky. It's had a number of problems over the years that, you talk about acts of God. One of them was a sinkhole.
Wow.
And it ruined their museum of many vintage
right.
Corvettes.
That's right. I saw that. I cried for 2 days. Yeah.
They could get some from Senator Mazza to replace them. He's got a
Oh,
few.
you have your own, I take it?
Yeah.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Well, listen, I really appreciate you
Yeah.
hearing me out.
Right ahead.
A small plug for GM. It's an exciting time to work for General Motors. I cover the Northeast region for them for state government affairs, and I'm based not too far from Bennington, Vermont, in the suburb of Albany.
Okay.
And it's, the type of company, and the rest of the industry as well. We're speeding full time to electric vehicle, 100% electric vehicle portfolios. General Motors and our CEO, Mary Barra, have been doing a great job. And we're going to have 30 models of electric vehicles by 2025. And we've pledged to make over 400,000 of these in North America through 2023. So right now we have the Chevrolet Bolt. We have the GMC Hummer just came out. There's a Cadillac. There's going to be a GMC Sierra, Chevrolet Silverado, Chevrolet Blazer, Chevrolet Equinox. And the Chevys are going to be in the $30,000 to $40,000 range, like the rest of our portfolio. For, our slogan is EVs for everyone. So, Chevrolet is for, most people, and it's going to continue in that vein. So again, thank you very much. I'll get right into it. And I feel it's important for the committee to hear our side of the story from General Motors directly, because I've listened to the testimony you've received both this year and last year. And I fully understand why legislators like yourselves would want to protect good businesses in your state. And, you're talking to the son of a car dealer myself. My dad had a car dealership, and I worked in every facet of it, up until we sold the store. And I understand what a difficult business it is. And I understand how good the dealers are generally in terms of they're people persons, and they are active in their community and philanthropic efforts and charitable efforts. And they generally do a great job. So this other side of the story that I want you to hear, and I feel it's important for you all personally, on behalf of your constituents, and certainly on behalf of General Motors, is a little bit of a reverse of what you've been hearing, which is the premise that you've been hearing generally is that auto dealers need protection from their auto manufacturers. And if they don't get it in state law, they're going to be in trouble. And what that's going to mean ultimately, and it's been said both implicitly and directly, is that they're going to go out of business, or they're going to be forced to lay off personnel. And that's something that, if I were a legislator, I would want to prevent. But the question is it really true? And so on a big picture level, you say, all right, well, number one, most states have this, in our opinion, infamous direct sales law, whereby manufacturers are mandated to sell their products and service them through an automobile dealer. And when I say infamous, I'm mostly speaking about the exemptions that have been granted in Vermont and other states. But so we're legally mandated to sell through the auto dealers. It would seem to indicate that we wouldn't have a motive to hurt them. Moreover, beyond the law, General Motors views its dealers as partners, and they view their dealers, most importantly, in a huge part of our future, whereby we feel we have advantage over Tesla and Rivian and others because of our auto dealers, because of our manufacturing footprint in North America and the United States in particular. We don't need to build a facility from ground up to manufacture EVs. We have tons of facilities, and we're converting one. Most recently, President Biden cut the ribbon on one in Michigan, where it's going from a facility that made over 3 million internal combustion engine vehicles to now 100% EVs. Same is true with our dealers. They are in every corner of the state. We have 20 in Vermont and in all states, and they are going to be the face of our EV future. And moreover, they're an asset in terms of we're spending $750 million for electric vehicle charging stations, not the proprietary kind that Tesla uses. These are going to be available to all makes and models. But our dealers are going to be the ones, because they know the community so well, who are going to tell us where to place these things. So do we have a motive to hurt them? No, we certainly don't. And based on the whole capitalistic nature of our industry, we're all competing for the loyalty of the customer. And so we do a myriad of things to make sure our dealers are healthy. And do we monitor their profitability? Absolutely, yes, because we want them to be in a position to make sure that the customer has a positive sales and service experience such that they buy another Chevy when their current ones get to the end of their lives. And I feel it's important to mention, because it's not just, Senator Mazza, your committee, or any other committee that I deal with in the Northeast, but it's almost lost in a translation that this relationship is dependent upon the manufacturers making these vehicles. So manufacturers make them, the dealers sell and service them. And I think it gets lost in translation a little bit. Having said that, and certainly it's true, like in my dad's case, he did very, very well because of the product that General Motors, and he had a foreign product as well, because of the product that they manufactured, and he was given an exclusive right to sell. So what do manufacturers do? They spend billions of dollars on assisting dealers in a myriad of ways, such as we have personnel that call on the dealers to make sure they have proper training for sales, for service, and for the dealers themselves. We offer dealer schools so that future generations and sons and daughters of dealers can become apt in how to manage these businesses. We provide incentives, as you know, not only just customer rebates, but we provide incentives for the dealers themselves that they're able to choose as to how to use. We provide assistance for them to upgrade their facilities. It's very important for a customer going into a Chevy dealership to make sure that it's a good building, that there's a good waiting room, that they can drive their car inside for service in a state like Vermont or New York when there's tons of snow on the ground or it's freezing rain. We have assistance for floor plans, the loans they take out to stock their showrooms and their lots. So there's not a real motive for any of us to hurt our dealers. We need them. We're interdependent on each other. And that's been the system, and it's worked well. So having said all of that, what about the examples that you've heard on this committee, both this year and last year, about, I know, Senator Mazza heard about going into his local dealer and he was forced to put up a new showroom when the existing showroom seemed perfectly fine. I've heard Mr. Cody and Mr. J say, wow, they're making us purchase very expensive, unnecessary equipment that we don't need. And moreover, they're shorting us on our warranty repairs. We're making warranty repairs, we're putting in our claims, and they're not giving us enough money. What about all that? Is that true? Well, I would submit to you that there's certainly problems that arise on behalf of both sides in this relationship. But whether it's true or not, the legislature isn't really the proper forum to adjudicate these. So as I said before, with the manufacturer's personnel, yeah, they have areas of redress with their zone personnel to say, look, I don't want to put up this showroom, or here's my reasoning why I don't want to buy this equipment, or here's why I think you're shorting me on the warranty claims. And the process is such that in the contracts that these parties enter into, there's arbitration. Vermont has its own non-judicial dispute resolution process. And then, yeah, they have a court system where you have breach of contract remedies or predatory marketing behavior. So what I say to you is, yes, and Senator Mazza, when you were out, you didn't hear the other side of the manufacturer from why they forced or pushed the dealer who you're friends with to upgrade his showroom, which looked perfectly good in your eyes. But I guarantee you there was another side of the story. Do these manufacturers make mistakes? From my dad's perspective, like, yeah. Are they egregious and are they designed to hurt? No, they are not. Are they the basis for justification for a state law? No, the legislature doesn't have the ability to regulate a two private party contract when the industry changes almost every day. So at the end of it all, from a public policy perspective, and you're also talking to someone who served as transportation counsel in the New York State Senate years ago for the majority leader. And I was lobbied by the General Motors and the dealer associations of New York. What public policy are we advancing here? And I say to you, ultimately, at the end of it all, you're doing a disservice to the Vermont consumer. And why is that? Well, the best example that I can think of in these very long bills that really I don't think any legislator or any other person who's not a dealer or an automaker or an attorney on either side have really a good grounding of understanding. But the best example I can point to you is this retail for warranty provision that's in the current bill draft. And what the bill says is that, and I heard the testimony on behalf of the dealers, is that when a manufacturer reimburses a dealer for repairing a warranty claim, they have to reimburse them at a fair rate that's computed in statute or prescribed in statute as the rate that the dealer charges to its retail customers, i.e. the customer that comes in to the dealership for a repair that is out of warranty. So your warranty is gone, you're paying for it, you go to the dealer and you get charged for the price of the part that replaces the defective part, and you pay the price of labor for the technician for the hours or so that the technician spent on repairing your car. And the dealer associations have been saying this for years, and it is law in a number of different states for years that say, hey, look, it's just fair. All right, put aside everything I've said before about, well, this really shouldn't be something that's worked out with the state of Vermont. This should be worked out between the two parties. But some of this stuff is a little bit by the boards, and this has been a law for a long time in a lot of other states. What do we see have happening? You actually have created in law an incentive for auto dealers to raise their price of parts, the markup on a part, and their price of labor on their retail customers to drive more funding from the automakers on warranty repairs. So in other words, in today's day and age, it's an unfortunate fact on behalf of General Motors and our dealers that 75% of consumers don't go to a car dealership. They don't return to a car dealership once their warranty is expired. They go to an independent service station. And I believe in part that's because of these laws, because I'll say it again, the dealer associations are proposing something, and the attorneys who support the dealer associations advertise, and I can show you some of the advertisement that, look, we created this law for you. We dealer association, not you legislators, we dealer associations, we got the legislature to do this. And now, as a result of our, quote, victory, you can legally drive millions of dollars from these automakers into your dealership. And if you're a small dealership or a mid-sized dealership, it can be, I don't know, I can show you the ads, $2 to $3 million a year, all by charging consumers more. So I say to you, as a former Senate employee, these things, if a consumer were to know about this or to say to you, hey, Senator Mazza, is it true? Like, why would you pass a law when you have no evidence of dealerships going out of business, laying personnel off, being driven out of business by automakers, and you're essentially increasing my prices to benefit some of the wealthiest and savviest and sophisticated and good business owners in the state of Vermont? Why are you doing it? What's the public policy justification? And I'll just close on that note, because there are many other provisions in the law that I view have a similar type of an effect, because it's arbitrary inclusion of government in between two private parties in a capitalistic entity. And there's several studies on this from consumer groups, from law reviews, from the different law schools, from the Federal Trade Commission. Like, there's a lot of evidence that I can show you that backs these claims. But for me, it makes common sense. And yeah, do dealers get upset with actions that automakers take? Do they make unwise decisions? Yeah. Do dealers make unwise decisions? Do they have issues that automakers don't like in terms of, we see now with the supply chain problem, and there's so slow inventory, dealers mark up vehicles, in some cases, $30,000 over MSRP. Do the manufacturers like that? No, we don't. We want a good experience for our customers, fair deals. Do we want our dealers to be healthy and profitable? Yes. And so with that, again, I know there's a sincere desire to protect your businesses. I really do, and I respect it a lot. But I also appreciate and respect your willingness to hear me out. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
Very good, very good testimony. And I think that have you had the I'm sure you have, has the manufacturers sat down and had periodic meetings with the dealers. So, I mean, some of these issues don't get as far to us. Is it a solution that there a lot of problems that exist today that General Motors or Ford had not been able to resolve between the dealers and the manufacturers, or are some of these issues not there?
No, no, well,
There's always going
let
to
me-
be some. I understand that. Yeah, there's always. Yeah. Okay, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, let me say this. So again, are the manufacturers perfect? No, they're not. But they have these personnel that are in Vermont. Our Northeast region is based in Danbury, Connecticut. So they have service and sales personnel to assist the dealers. And so typically what would happen, and even in my dad's case, when you have a problem, and let's say it's your friend, Senator Mazza, they're making me put in new tile on my floor, my showroom floor, and my tile's fine. I just put it in last year or something. So typically what happens is that dealer would go to his service or sales rep and say, hey, what are you doing? Like, this makes no sense. It's going to cost me $15,000 or whatever. And this is a bad idea. And I know, like, yeah, GM has a reason to protect its brand, to make a good facility for its consumers. And like McDonald's, you see them get updated every so often and they all kind of look the same, or a hotel chain. And that's sort of the motive by it. But the dealer says, hey, look, this is the problem. Well, let's say the service guy says, forget about it. I don't want to hear it. Like, put the tile floor in and stop complaining. Well, what's the next avenue? Well, we have dealer councils where we have select groups of small, medium, and large dealers who meet regularly with the top brass in Detroit to go over these policies. Like, for example, when they're going to ask for a remodeling of the dealership facility and how much General Motors is going to pay them and incentivize them to do it. Then, all right, so let's say you appeal to the dealer council and that doesn't work. Well, if you really feel you're being wronged, well, now you have arbitration that you can access within your contract rights, that the contract that governs your relationship. If that doesn't work, and it's a really huge issue, and I know my dad never wanted to sue. Like, no dealer wants, well, I should say this. Most dealers don't want to sue their manufacturers for a lot of reasons. And one is fear of getting on sort of their bad side. But if you feel strong enough, you have redress in the courts. So I don't know if that answers your question, Senator Mazza, but yeah, they want to have good relations with the dealers, and all the automakers have what's almost like a consumer satisfaction index with their dealers, because we need them to be in good shape and we need them to be partners.
We need each other, I guess. That's what it is.
Yeah.
It's going to be successful. Senator Ingalls, I think you had your hand up, please.
Yeah, so I'm not hear all of that. And I was in the car business from 1991 until 2006, and actually 2009. And I was at every aspect of it, from starting at the beginning and moving up through. And, this relationship that you wish for with manufacturers and dealers has always been kind of strained, in my opinion. And when I finally got to the point of where I had got to the pinnacle of my career in that business, where the keys to a dealership were basically handed to me, I chose not to stay in that business because of the relationships between franchise and manufacturers. Things change in your father's times, things change. There were easier times and all of that. And I see the struggles of a growing industry and a changing industry where the manufacturers are really just trying to exclude dealers from moving forward as a partnership, and the fight that they have to stay viable in this business. I mean, for something as simple as what you talk about, the unfair practices of dealers getting paid for warranty work. Well, the service department's a big part of a profit center for a dealer, and I just don't see why you would think that they should, to fix a defect that comes from the manufacturer, and it really does. I mean, the dealer's not there making that car. Why they should make room in their service department to work at a discounted rate to take up that precious space. So I could go on and on and on, and I'm not going to do that. But I don't think that the dealers are in my opinion, are being overly asking of what they're looking for protections. I think the protections have proven to be needed, in my opinion. And I don't think that anything that we're doing today is going to put you guys out of business.
Well, Senator Engel, I can't thank you enough for sharing that with me. It's really something I respect and appreciate. And I'll tell you, the reason I'm not a car dealer is because it's a really hard business. And the turning point for me was when my dear Aunt Tessie, God bless her soul, started screaming at me at the when I was a service advisor over a defect in the car and our inability to fix it. And I say that tongue in cheek, but it is difficult. It is very difficult. But I again, I would say to you that it's really not the purview of the legislature to be adjudicating and governing this relationship. Because if you said to me, well, I decided not to go into this business because of the heavy-handed nature, in your opinion, not putting words in your, just trying to summarize, heavy-handed nature of how the auto manufacturer personnel treated the dealership you were working in. I say, yeah, I can see that.
It was seven dealerships that we were responsible for. So it wasn't just one, it was across the line, and it was from domestic, and it was not to name names, but domestic and foreign sources. So it was a very wide swath. At one time, we were representing 15 manufacturers. So and they were all brothers and sisters in the way that it went, the way it happened, I felt.
Yeah, but I guess Senator Ingalls, if you said to me, well, the dealership wasn't profitable, and so yeah, they may have felt they weren't getting a fair shake on the warranty, but the dealerships were not profitable, I'd say to you, well, maybe then there's a public policy justification, but I'm not even so sure that warrants a public policy justification, because the manufacturers of these 7 franchises in your example, they're not going to do well versus their competitors if their dealer is in a position to put aside the time to perform these warranty repairs, which, by the way, are also mandated in many states' franchise codes as being the exclusive right of the dealer, such that the automaker doesn't have another outlet. So, for example, they can't deputize a Jiffy Lube or license an independent repair shop to do warranty repairs. It has to be the dealers. And what we see in some of these advertisements I can share with you, they show, and we see in our own experience, that because of the state law, a markup on a part can be over like 100% over cost or 150% over cost to a customer who's out of warranty, such that the dealers actually do make money on the warranty repairs. And so they're more than willing to give up the service department or the lift space and have the technicians work on. And that's not really a good result, I think, from the Senate standpoint.
Any other questions from the members at this point? Yes, Senator Chittenden, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Grimaldi. Really useful testimony. One thing I'd like to reconcile with what I heard you say is that the dealers have the recourse to take it, their content or their discontent to the courts. And I also heard you say that it's not the legislature's job to adjudicate these issues, but we do set the state laws, and we have the judicial branch to adjudicate those things. So my question to you is, in the document that we received from the Vermont Dealers Association, is there anything in there that you would think, because I would think GM wants to stay out of the courts as much. Lawyers are expensive, and we have too many of them, if you ask me, and they do really well when there are these fights. Did you see anything in there that other states have adopted that might get reduce the amount of those contestations that go to the court system, and thus create a more, I don't know, useful and less frictionful relationship between the two of you?
No, I think it exacerbates it. In fact, it changes the burden of proof for these types of claims, whereby typically, if Senator Chittenden, I'm suing you over whatever, you and I have a private relationship, or I have a breach of contract claim against you, or you didn't perform the proper services. As the plaintiff, I have the burden to prove by a preponderance of the evidence that you didn't perform as you were supposed to. This flips it. So no, and I'd say to you that most of these provisions, when the dealer association representatives say, oh, look, this is in a bunch of states. It's in New York, it's in this state, it's in that state. These are states whereby the automakers don't support these things. They get run over in the legislatures. And the dealer associations make the same claims that they are to you, which is not a big deal. We just want to protect local businesses, and this is helpful. And we're going to go out of business, and we're going to lose jobs, and we're being bullied, and blah 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 blah. And it works because I think with all, and I listened to a little bit of the person testifying before on the highway safety issue. Of everything that you guys have on your plate, this is one that, are you going to get involved in disputes between, fast food chains and restaurant chains and hotel? Like, no, there's only a certain amount of breadth and width that the legislature has to deal with these things. And so it's the market for better or for worse. I think the bill exacerbates problems. And I think, to be honest with you, most of these provisions, when they're used and when a dealer is pushed to the spot where they feel they're being wronged and they have to hire an attorney, are when things aren't going well in terms of the dealer's personal life. Just like every other human being on the face of this earth, you get into this business, it's a lot of hours. You work, good dealers work crazy hours and on weekends, and you get burnt out, and you have issues with your employees, and you have turnover of technicians. There's a technician shortage. Long story short, you get to a point where General Motors says to you, like, hey, Senator Chittenden, like, your market share for Chevy in your area of Vermont is 10%, let's say. You're at 5%. Like, Toyota is getting your sales, and Honda's getting your sales. Ford, like, what's going on? You're like, well, I'm having troubles. GM then comes in and works with you. They try to get you back on your feet, to try to get things going. If it doesn't work, and you're looking at sort of the end of the road, maybe in terms of, the manufacturers, you don't want to buy the equipment to service the vehicle, it's too much money, then you may hire an attorney and sue. And I think that's when these laws are utilized the most. But for the most part, I don't think they have anything to do with a dealer's success or failure. It's their ability to compete.
Other questions of the committee? Senator Kitchell, I don't see you on the screen, or Senator Pertlick, we're all set.
No, I'm right here. I'm
Okay.
listening.
Okay. Okay, well, thank you very much for your testimony, and we'll hear from other folks here today. And you covered a lot of areas, and very informative for us. Thank you.
Thanks, Senator Moss.
Thank you. Okay, next, who would like to go next? Chris Curtis, Publics. He's not with us, right? Is that correct, Jeannie?
Yeah, he couldn't.
He couldn't make it, right? Okay. John Zacconi.
Senator, nice to see you.
Good morning. Good morning. How you doing?
Good morning. I'm John Zacconi, the Executive Secretary to the Transportation Board.
Okay.
I also run the lemon law here in the state of Vermont. I'm sort of the clerk, if you will, to the Vermont New Motor Vehicle Arbitration Board. So I can speak to issues related to that.
Yeah.
I was invited here from you all. I'm not completely sure what it is that you're looking from me. I do, the Transportation Board does deal with the litigation. Most of the litigation, if there is a problem between the dealers and the manufacturers, come to the board through what we call the maker-dealer law that you folks put into effect several years ago. The litigation is not lengthy in terms of the amount. We have seen some, and I'm happy to talk about that. Any of the board's process that you might want to talk about. The lemon law has extensive experience with dealing with the manufacturers directly and dealing with the issues that come up between Vermonters and having to deal with the manufacturers directly. I know there's parts of this bill that talk about if internet sales and whether or not you can deal through your local dealership. You might have to deal with the manufacturers directly. So I can certainly speak to, at least through warranty work, and when your vehicle's having problems, what it's like for Vermonters to deal directly with the manufacturers rather than with their local dealers. And there's the burden of proof issue, obviously we're the litigators. So If you would like my take on that, I'm happy to do that. So those are the places where I think I am qualified to speak here. Like I said, I didn't interject myself here. You folks invited me. So I just want to make sure I'm
Well,
spending
we're
my time
just
with
trying
you
to-
on what you want.
The subject was taken up. We're taking up on dealers and manufacturers. We'd like to find, some good consensus that's working. And you're right. I think it was stated that franchises are a very different product. And for us to get involved in franchises, is going to be very careful. But we just want to hear both sides and how it's working. And we'd like to see everybody come together and be one happy family, but sometimes that's not the case. But anyway, we're just trying to hear from. So anything you have on the lemon laws, probably would be the only thing that I could think about. Is that working well? Do you have a lot of cases or that?
The lemon law works fine. We had an uptick in cases last year. We're at the point of doing about 65 or so a year,
Wow.
which is not a ton, but we're a small state. The issue that I hear a lot from Vermonters is that when they have to have a problem and have to deal directly with the manufacturer, it's very frustrating. They don't get a lot of attention. Their calls go unanswered. They told, here's your case manager, who never gets back to them. I have seen even in my contacts who actually work with me very well when they have to work directly with me, but there's a lot of turnover in it. It does cause some issues. Vermonters, and I've never dealt with a car myself. These are what the Vermonters tell me. But the issue generally gets to, they get no satisfaction until they file with us. And then the manufacturers are faced with litigation that they have to deal with because we carry the big hammer, the general Vermonter does not. And if I have any concerns, it's leaving the Vermonters we are a small group, but who have to deal directly with manufacturers, because the history, at least through the lemon law, is they are not treated very well by the manufacturers directly. They're treated, some of them have concerns about their dealers as well. Don't get me wrong. It's not like everybody has a positive experience there either. But the general consensus is they would much rather deal with their local dealer and can get satisfaction to their problems that way. But when they have to deal direct with, I don't want to pick on just GM because they're here, but GM, Ford, FCA, which deals with Jeep and Chrysler and all the rest of them, they have very frustrating experience and come to me with all kinds of stories. And it's not until the state gets involved and they have me intervening that they actually get satisfaction.
Good.
Not saying that will go on to, if you've got them directly dealing with the changes you're thinking about in law, I wouldn't know, but I'm just saying that's what we see, at least in the interaction we have currently under the program we have.
Thank you, John. Any questions from the committee from John?
Yeah, I do.
Yes, go ahead, Senator Pertlick.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, Mr. Zacconi, I am very interested in anything you might have to say about that burden of proof section 5 and 6 that deal with that. If you have any comment on that, I would.
Yeah, just to give you a quick history of the maker dealer law and what we have seen. We've only seen 2 cases that I'm aware of since you passed that law. One with what was Jerry's Nissan, which used to be in Rutland. And they filed with us, but then quickly filed for a stay, and then they settled, and I believe Jerry's sold, and that settled their case. The other one, and this was in 2014, both cases actually 2014. The other one was between GM and Stone Motors. I don't know if any of you are familiar with that dealership in Middlebury. And that actually never got to a hearing before the board, but did have almost 2 years of pre-hearing issues trying to get it ready for adjudication before the board. And this really came down to the performance measures, how the, and I'll get to the burden of proof in a second. I think the story is necessary to get there, is the performance measures are put into effect by the dealers, by the manufacturers. And being small, Vermont's rural areas have trouble sometimes doing the same things and with the same kind of sales that you could get in a bigger city. Even from a Middlebury to a Burlington can be very different. So the performance measures a lot of times don't really do well in our rural areas. And what we saw after the downturn in 2008, which led into 2010, which got to the problems, is that the manufacturers regroup. They want to consolidate, to do things that the companies do, and it leaves our rural dealers vulnerable because the performance measures that they have are don't always deal well with them. They want them to compete with New York as well as the other ones in Vermont. So when it gets to us, there's a lot of talk over, are these performance measures fair? And when you get to how they put this together, you wind up with an issue that deals directly with proprietary information, if you're a GM or a Ford or a Honda. And what can be placed on the table, what is placed on the table, and what is what the board wants and can get access to can make a difference on who has the burden of proof. If the dealer has the burden of proof, that's one argument. They try to get the information. We wind up with discovery issues and whether or not they can get certain information because it's proprietary or it's overly burdensome to put it together. If the manufacturer has the burden of proof, would they, this is a question, would they be more willing to put some of that information on the table that is very helpful to the adjudicators to determine whether or not what's going on is fair? If you have a burden of proof that is actually on the manufacturers, they may be more willing to place certain information on the table because they have to show us, because it's their burden of proof, that what they're doing is fair, not the other side trying to convince us that it's unfair with the burden on them. And when you think about it logically, the manufacturers sort of start the fight, and by saying, we want you to do this or that, or put you out of business. We want you to consolidate. We want you to move. We want to have the construction, whatever it is. And so they are in effect the defendant then, but they turn into the plaintiff when they file suit. So who really is the defendant and who really is the plaintiff in a case like that? Depending on how you want to look at it. Now, from the board's perspective, we will deal with whatever the hand that's dealt us. We don't have a dog in the fight of, the relationship between them and what you do here. I'm not in any way trying to speak to that, because from us, we will deal with the law as it comes to us and what the rules are. But in terms of how that process can run smooth, the burden of proof may have some influence on how easy it is to, even for the court, due to the want for proprietary information, to extract the information we may find helpful to give everybody a fair shake.
Thank you, John. Any other questions? Senator Pertzik, you got a follow-up or?
No, that was helpful. If I guess is just looking through the bill, is there anything else that you think would impact the work of the board or the work that you do on behalf of Vermonters, either negatively, positively, or just something that you want to raise as a red flag, not take a position on?
Yeah, the only other thing that I can put on the table is as we lose dealers, or if we lose, we may keep the dealers but lose the lines, because I think it's, I understand like Lincoln and Lexus, we don't have dealers for those here in Vermont anymore. I don't know that for a fact. That's what I'm told. I don't believe we have Infinity. I think the only place you can get a Fiat now is at Goss in South Burlington. Understand that when you have a problem through the Lemon Law, and this is the Lemon Law now I'm talking about, you have to get your vehicle serviced by an appropriate dealer. That's right in the warranty. If you go to Joe's Garage while your car is under warranty and you come to the Lemon Law, we will have to dismiss your case, because the warranties themselves say only authorized repair shops can deal with it. And once Joe's Garage touches your car, all bets are off. And generally we have to dismiss those cases because they make the argument that they've done things that we don't know what it is, and that exacerbates the problem. So as we lose lines of cars, when people buy those and they go out of state to buy them, as long as the vehicle is registered here in the state of Vermont, we have authority over it. But now to repair it properly, these folks have to ship or take their vehicles out of state. And that becomes problematic because all the work has to be done within the state. So it's not a big problem right now. I'm not trying to tell you that, but down the line, if we get shrunk here in Vermont, if you will, and we lose things, it can potentially make it harder for Vermonters to deal with the laws that they have to deal with to get satisfaction when they have problems. Because I do get, it's tough to put your vehicle on a flatbed and, ship it down to New York or over to New Hampshire or whatever, because sometimes they don't work. You can't drive them. It just, is it impossible to do business that way? No, but a Vermonter can easily take it to their local dealership or local fix-it place and have something done because they didn't read the fine print in their warranty, and then they're basically up the creek. The more dealers we have here who deal with the most lines, I think that actually protects Vermonters through the lemon law when they have warranty problems.
Okay. Anything else?
I just wanted to say, I hope that reference to Joe's Garage was a Zappa reference.
It was actually.
Thank you, John. Good seeing you.
Good to see you folks. Thank you.
Thanks for the input. Okay, we have just, let's see here, Justin Johnson, I believe, with us this morning. Justin?
I actually think probably be best to go to David Bright next, because he is from the Auto Association, is going to follow up with some of the detail. Right. I don't want us to run out of time.
All right. Okay. David, you're okay. David Bright, go right ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, members of the committee, for the opportunity to be here today. For the record, my name is David Bright. I'm a senior attorney with the Alliance for Automotive Innovation, and we represent the automobile manufacturers. So the draft bill before you, it's been characterized as really following other states' leads on most of the issues, with the exception of a prohibition on over-the-air upgrades and updates. And in the interest of the committee's time, I'll highlight some examples of where other states may have addressed that particular issue, but not in the problematic way that this draft does. But I'd like to start with the over-the-air updates language, and that's on page 12 of the bill. Because again, as even the proponents say, no state has done this before. And I certainly wouldn't tell you that just because no one has done it before, that's a reason that Vermont can't do it. However, I would submit to you that if no other state has done it, caution and in-depth look would be prudent in this situation. Because this committee is in fact the first committee anywhere in the country that's even held a hearing on this topic. And in terms of the ramifications, both for consumers in terms of their safety and convenience, as well as the interaction of how this language would play with federal law, I think it merits a lot of attention. First and foremost, obviously, is safety. We in the auto industry are seeing now companies that are doing recalls over the air, fixing something in the software that has caused a problem. And if Vermont passes a law that says manufacturers cannot fix software for safety reasons over the air, that's going to have an extremely harmful effect on recall compliance and the number of vehicles that are going to be repaired under recall. So first and foremost, safety, that's a huge issue for us. We always strive for 100% recall completion, and this bill runs counter to that. You've also got the convenience angle of this. Why require a customer to drive to a dealer every time it needs either an upgrade or an update to their vehicle? Now, I heard previous testimony that perhaps this language wasn't meant for just routine updates of software, because you can imagine customers would go insane having to go to the dealer just for updates. But even if we're talking about upgrades, something that can be purchased, why require the customer to do that? Particularly if you're talking about, say, a rural customer or a customer of a brand that doesn't have a dealership in their town. You can be talking about asking a customer to burn hours of their time when in fact they don't need to burn more than 10 seconds of their time. There's no reason to do that. That's extraordinarily inconvenient for the customer. It discourages innovation from the manufacturers because we can't bring viable services to the customers that they would want. And indeed, Vermonters would be the only ones in the country that have to endure the trouble of going to the dealership for things they shouldn't need to go for. And indeed, that compounds something that S47 had passed in Vermont, which says that customers can't order parts directly from a manufacturer if the manufacturer wants to sell it online. They have to go to the dealership, which again, it's not that they can't buy the part through the dealership. It's just that they shouldn't need to go to the dealership if they want to order something from the comfort of their own home. It's extraordinarily anti-consumer. I mentioned there are also aspects in terms of the federal law. How does this interact with that? Let's look at the Copyright Act, for example. Software code, as you all know, it's copyrighted material. The manufacturer owns that copyright. Copyright Act tells the manufacturer that it has control over how its copyrighted material is disseminated and commercialized. What this bill is saying is that, no, we don't care if you have a copyright for that software code. Only dealers can sell it. You may not sell it. So I think you've got a question of whether there's conflict and preemption with the Copyright Act here. Let's also look at the Motor Vehicle Safety Act. The National Highway Transportation Safety Administration, as you know, has authority to regulate safety on automobiles. Now, an obvious aspect of that going forward, as more and more of your car is related to software and manufacturers have more and more ability to change that software remotely, it's entirely foreseeable that NHTSA could promulgate rules that conflict with the statute. And again, that conflict would be in a way that's not pro-consumer. It's going to make it harder for customers to have safe vehicles in Vermont. So again, we have extraordinary concerns with this, both from the manufacturer's point of view of being able to commercialize its copyrighted material the way it wants to, but also the well-being of the customer. This is clearly an anti-consumer provision. So again, I also mentioned that there are other issues in the bill that may have been done in other states, but not the way that this bill proposes it. And I'll give you a few examples. One is on page 10 of the bill. This is paragraph B. It's talking about facilities incentive programs. And what it says is that if a dealer makes a change to its facility, that for the next 10 years, it is deemed to be in compliance with any new facility incentive program that comes along. So I'll give you a hypothetical. Let's say that a manufacturer has an incentive program that says, if you renovate your service bay, we will give you X amount of money. And a dealer does that. And then a manufacturer comes along and says, all right, we will give you Y amount of money if you redo the windows in your showroom and put up some flat screens and make your showroom look nicer. And we'll give you Y money for that. What this bill says is that if a dealer did that service bay improvement, that it doesn't need to do the showroom improvement, but it gets that money anyway. Again, that's not fair either to the manufacturer, who is going to be stuck with saying, well, how do I run incentive programs? I have to pay people who don't have to comply with it. But it's also unfair to the other dealers. If you're a dealer and you spent this money to do a renovation and your competitor down the street did not spend that money, but still gets the incentive money, how is that fair to you as that dealer? It's not. So again, this is something that only one state, to my knowledge, has passed. Other states have looked at timing regulations on how often manufacturers can require changes to facilities. But again, that's not what this is. This is going much farther. This will put Vermont out of the norm. And I'll give you one more somewhat related consideration. This is on page 12. And you heard in previous testimony that the point of this language is to apply the same standards for consideration of local market factors to all contracts. So not just the franchise agreement that governs the actual dealership itself and the right to sell, but any contract, whether it be an incentive program or what have you. If a manufacturer, before it offers something like that, actually has to go through the process of looking at every single dealer in the state, every single local market factor in there, to avoid being sued later on by a dealer, the transaction costs just go through the roof. And the manufacturer's gonna have to look and say, is this really worth it? Is it worth the time and hassle to do all these economic analyses just for what should be a routine incentive program. And so it's discouraging the types of agreements that in the past are volunteer agreements. You're not going to get your dealership taken away if you don't do it. They're volunteer agreements that sophisticated businesses, dealers are very sophisticated business people, and manufacturers have agreed to. And it's basically saying that, you know, we don't care that you've been doing that way for years in mutually beneficial agreements. We're just going to drive the transaction costs way too high. And then I'll give you one final consideration to chew on before I take up too much of the committee's time. I certainly don't want to do that. But this is the issue of data. And there's about 3 pages of text in this bill on data, which in my experience has been one of the most complex and difficult things to legislate on when it comes to automobile franchise law. But one of the things it does, and this is on page 15 of the bill, is it lists 4 specific times when a manufacturer can actually require data from a dealer. And you know, we've heard testimony that this is, you know, similar to other states, and other states have recognized that yes, there are times when manufacturers need data from a dealer. You know, this is the 21st century; everything runs on data. But this bill is noticeably ignoring some very important things, and I'll give you some example. Other states have said that the manufacturer needs data to evaluate the dealer's performance. You know, we only have the ability to put one dealer in an area. By law, we can't add additional ones. So we need to make sure that every dealer is performing well. We need the data to do that. You know, and I'm quoting from Arizona right now. They also allow, you know, marketing that directs leads to the dealers. They allow the manufacturer to get vehicle diagnostic data. Obviously, we need to know that so that we can, you know, make sure our cars are performing properly. We need data for development and improvement of products and services. Again, the entire game here is responding to customer demand. And you can't do that as a manufacturer if you don't know who your customers are and what their experiences are like. And even just routine things. For example, Arizona also allows the manufacturer to know for certain the dealer that sold a vehicle and the date it was sold on. And that's not having to wait until the state tells it via you know, public documents, but rather, you know, right away, so that we know exactly what's going on in the marketplace, so that we can tailor incentives that are timed well to what's going on in the market and direct it at you know, products that need it. So again, I could go on forever because this is, you know, an area of law that gets into the weeds very quickly and gets complex. But I hope I did give you a flavor of, you know, just how complex this bill is, some of the considerations in it, and why manufacturers are concerned. So again, I appreciate the time, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, David. A very good, good summary. Any questions before we haven't got much time left, but any questions? I don't see any. Thank you very much for coming. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. I think we have one more. Justin Johnson, are you still with us?
Yeah. And yeah, so I'm representing GM in Vermont, helping out Chris, who I thought did a great job. But I guess just the one thing, and it's a slightly bigger picture thing that I would say is, you know, last year, the legislature sort of cleared the decks for the new non-franchise EV companies, in part, I believe, to ensure that they could sell more EVs into the state, and to enable them to have a facility for servicing them, which I totally understand. But we cleared the decks for those guys. We now have a sort of 2-tier system in Vermont, where one group of manufacturers does not have to do any of this, and one group sort of has to do it all. As it happens, I would note the group that does not have to also doesn't use union labor, and at least a couple of them are owned by 2 of the richest humans in the history of the world. But I think that it's just important as we think about why it is that we sort of did that and recognized that there was a sort of new way of doing business. It's a great indication of something that Chris said, which was the auto industry is not only very competitive, everyone's fighting for market share all the time, but it's also moving quickly. And I think that one of the concerns, sort of one of the overall concerns have is we, in a sense, are sort of, it feels like we're trying to lock in a particular model at a particular point in time, which risks leaving Vermont as the industry changes and develops over time, as GM in particular, but also the other manufacturers are starting to roll out these a whole line, new line range of EVs that they and look for new ways to connect with customers and talk to them. As all that is happening, and no one really knows exactly how it's going to work, except, and Chris will correct me if I'm wrong, but in GM's mind, this is absolutely going to involve them and their dealers. I mean, the way for GM to get EV market share in the future is through their dealers. They're not going to do it on their own. And this just seems to risk locking us into a moment in time that will make it very difficult for the franchise dealers the franchise manufacturers rather, going forward, while after we've cleared the decks for the franchise, the non-franchise manufacturers. But Chris, did you have anything to add?
Oh, I think that's right. And again, I understand why there's an appeal to allow some of these new automakers to have an exemption. But the exemption is not just from the ability to sell directly. It's an exemption from all the things we're discussing that's in front of this committee in this proposed franchise law. And yes, while our dealers are an asset for us in moving forward with our electric vehicles, the franchise law is an enormous detriment, both in terms of cost and in terms of the limiting the ability of automakers to innovate and change with the markets. And so I believe the reason why the Auto Dealer Association were so opposed to allowing for the exemption last year is because they see this as something that's going to be detrimental to them in the future. If this two-class system continues, it's going to put pressure on the traditional automakers to re-examine sort of this relationship when you look at what the consumer groups say are billions and billions of dollars that are being forced through from automakers to dealers under these franchise laws. So the data issue, all the rest of it, warranty, they're all part of a very large franchise code that Tesla and Rivian, who by the way, I don't believe has even sold a car yet, they won't have to abide by in Vermont, whereas Ford and Toyota and Chrysler and GM will. So I think it's a good point, Justin, and appreciate you raising it.
Okay, we are out of time. Any questions from the committee before we have to be on the floor in a short time, so. Well, thank everybody for this morning. Very good information. This is a very delicate subject, and the information is good to have on both sides because it is an issue that we spent quite a bit of time on, and there was good arguments on both sides. So with that,
Mr. Chair.
Yes, Senator Kitchell.
I would like Mr. Bright to put in a document that's, the major points that he was raising in bullets. You're talking about safety recall, you're talking about copyright issues, you're talking about the consumer protection and the incentive payments. I mean, I made some notes, but if you could take and just extract what you see as legal issues that you're raising, because our legal staff are we need to evaluate those. I would hope perhaps, or maybe we have it, but I don't want a lengthy communication. I would just like to take the arguments that you were raising and just put it in a bullet form.
Be happy to do that, Senator.
Thank you.
All right. Anything else? If not, very interesting, and we've learned a lot again today. Thank you very much for all showing up this morning, and we'll be in touch. Thank you.
Thanks for your time.
Thank you very much for your time. Thank you. Okay, you can take a